for Bring Your Own Lunch. Personal stories about the business with my daddy, Dave T. Koenig.
All right, come on in, have a seat, welcome. This is the Bring Your Own Lunch podcast at BringYourOwnLunch.com, the magic of iTunes, the majesty of Stitcher, and however you found your way to download this podcast, I thank you. As you heard at the top, my name is Dave T. Koenig. I'm an actor, writer, director, producer, comedian, all-around swell dude. I have come here to kick ass and chew bubblegum, and wouldn't you know it, I'm all out of bubblegum. And of course, I'm the host of the podcast you're listening to right now. BYOL is the hashtag you can use if you want to jump on board and get involved and say hello and do the social media thing. You can like us on Facebook.com/BringYourOwnLunch. You can follow us on Twitter at BYOL Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Bring Your Own Lunch. And there's several other ways to get in touch. But if you need a base for operations, you can always go to the website, the mothership, if you will, BringYourOwnLunch.com. You can find out all the information about the guests on this program, past, present, and presumably future. And you can also send me a personal email, dave@BringYourOwnLunch.com. It's Thursday. I usually put this show out on Wednesday. Obviously, things have fallen behind. It's for very good reason, and I will explain that in a moment. But I do want to talk about my guest this week, who is a very, very good actor, John Tague, a new friend of the show, originally from the East Coast in New Jersey. He now lives out in L.A., and we hear the story of how he went from one side of the country to the other, and some of the roles he had along the way in film and television. But what's really interesting to me is that he has his own web series that he has written and produced and stars in called The Rolling Soldier. And what's fascinating to me is so much of what you see online, a web series, original series, if you will, so much of it is comedy, and The Rolling Soldier is not comedy. It's very much a drama, very interesting stuff, really, really well shot. I took a look at it myself, and I think you should too. And the story of what got him to doing his own work and creating his own opportunities is one that I think is good for all of us to listen to and take some notes on. So I think John's story definitely has something in store for you, regardless of where you are in whatever stage of life you're in right now. So looking forward to that. Just a note, he's out in L.A. I am not. And since I don't have the budget to go fly out there to interview him, we did this over FaceTime. And it was an experiment for me. Bear with any audio difficulties that we may have had. It was an adventure, and I appreciate John's patience and willingness to jump in on this with me. I think it turned out fine, but of course, in my paranoid mind, I worry that you're going to hear one warble and be like, Dave, you dummy, why did you do that? But I don't think you're gonna. I think you're going to enjoy what you hear, and I think everything's going to be fine, and I should really just relax. One of the reasons I may not be relaxing is because I've had a very busy week. 1 week ago, or a little bit over a week ago, I started rehearsals for a play that went up last night and is done with. It was a very short sprint of a thing, but it was so great to do it. I had the very, very great honor and privilege to be part of the cast of the Maltese Walter that was part of the 40th annual Samuel French Off-Broadway Short Play Festival. The short play was written by John Minnigan, who I've worked with before, and produced by John Tague, my old friend Miranda John Tague, who you heard on this podcast several episodes ago, and her usual director partner, Stephen Broadbeck. I got to work with him again. I've worked in the past with both of them, but I got a chance to work with some new people. Stephen's assistant director, Chelsea Thaler, she was great. And the people I worked with, my fellow castmates, were just great. And we had a great time, really just pushing to get this thing on its feet. Kevin Lorek and Valerie Lenegro, I couldn't have asked for two cooler people to work with, and it was such a good experience. And last night we performed it. We were up there at the East 13th Street Theater, the home of the Classic Stage Company, in front of a great sold-out crowd. We were one of 4 plays that went up in our session last night, and it's an interesting thing. It's a playwrights festival, so playwrights from around the world submitted to this festival. 1,500 scripts were submitted. They chose 30 to be able to perform at least once at this festival. And last night was our turn, and some of the plays were asked to return later this weekend on Saturday, and they will choose some finalists from that to perform on Sunday. And those finalists, those plays, will be published by the Samuel French Company, who is renowned for publishing the finest plays in the world. So last night we did our thing, got a great response from a very receptive audience. It was really awesome. We found out later that evening that we unfortunately were not asked to come back this weekend. And it's a disappointing thing because I think the response we got was great. I think John's play is funny and a lot of fun to perform and really interesting. And there was no reason I thought that it shouldn't be brought back. But here's the cool thing. The people at Samuel French loved it so much that they would like to work with John to publish that play anyway. So even though we weren't asked to come back later this weekend, John's play is going to live on through the Samuel French Company, and that is the coolest thing ever. So my congratulations to John, and for what it's worth, congratulations to everybody involved in last night's performance of the Maltese Walter, because it was a great thing for me, and I'm proud of it. And I'm going to go forward knowing that we did a damn good job. Speaking of festivals, I have a little more of an update for you. I spoke earlier one time about Babygirl Blues and Other Colored People. That's the original series. It's kind of a theme this week. That was created by my friend Tia Dion Hodge-Jones, you heard back in episode 8 of this podcast. She submitted that to a bunch of festivals, and we're waiting word back on some of them. But we did find out that we will be part of the second annual Real Soul Film Festival. That'll take place on August 30th at the National Black Theater uptown in New York City. And I couldn't be happier for Tia and for Justin Anthony Kennedy and Penwa, the other actors in that series, and co-directors Tia and David Wasserman. And I'll have the preview video for that series in the show notes for this episode at bringyourownlunch.com. But if you want to come down and see the premiere episode of that series, which I am proud and honored and grateful to star in alongside Tia and Justin and Penwa, it'd be great to see you come on down and watch with us. The actual time is TBA, so I will update as soon as I can. But congratulations to everybody involved in that. It's great to share good news. I'm thrilled about that. Also thrilled that Banuba is on board. Go visit Banuba, banuba.net, BANOOBA.net. That's the band that plays the music that you hear at the beginning, middle, and end of this show, and they are awesome. I am so glad that they're on board, and I would love you to support them the way they support us. Go down there, their music, buy their music, go see them live. They're a great live band. And just tell them Dave says hi. And if you want to support this program, well, the best thing to do is to rate, review, and subscribe to this program. Rating, reviewing tells the world that we're doing some good stuff. It helps tell iTunes or Stitcher that they should tell other people what we're doing. And I also found out, and you may have heard me say this before, that if you do subscribe, you're guaranteed to see the most recent episodes because of some weird quirk on iTunes. If you're not subscribed, you don't always see the most recent episode, but as soon as you subscribe, you see them all. So if that's not incentive enough, I don't know what to tell you. So go rate, review, subscribe to Bring Your Own Lunch. All right, let's get into it with John Tague, actor, writer, producer, entrepreneur, deadhead? We'll find out. Here's John. Enjoy. How often do you use FaceTime?
Not very often.
No, I don't either. It's something that's it's a big thing with my iPhone, and it seems like it would be the greatest thing in the world, but I almost never use it, and it's kind of funny to me.
I don't think it's caught on yet. You know.
Which is weird because it's been such a part of the iPhone right from the beginning. But
right.
You know, when you have it and you don't need it, I mean, it's there, but it's a nice luxury. But you know,
well, I think the hard thing with the iPhone is like holding up the camera, you know, in that position where you know your arm gets tired holding it up after a while.
That is true. That is true. Yeah,
who wants to do that?
No, exactly. And you know, I have a couple of kids, and my wife will go out of town, or I'll go out of town, and we'll try to talk to them using FaceTime because it's better than just talking to them, you know, just using your voice. But even for them, it gets tiring, and they're like, "Yeah, okay, I'm done with this now. Thanks."
Yeah.
And you're thinking in our business, you know, it would be better to do more conversation face to face so they can see our faces more. But that's
actually, you know what? I have done a casting over FaceTime.
You have done that, okay?
Yeah, I have, and I thought it was fantastic. I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah,
because it was for a pharmaceutical commercial audition,
okay.
And it was like kind of testimonial thing. And I was like, oh, this would be fantastic if I didn't have to, schlep all the way down to Santa Monica every day.
I saw in your bio that you are from New Jersey. Where in New Jersey
Yes.
did you come from?
I grew up in Chatham, which is kind of sandwiched in between Summit and Morristown, that area. So it's about, like 45 minutes outside of Manhattan.
When you grew up in New Jersey, because I grew up on Long Island, and I've talked about that, endlessly, and people are probably tired of it by now. But for you, what did New York City represent to you growing up in Chatham, which is, roughly the same distance from Long Island to the city? So what did you think of when you thought New York City when you were growing up?
Well, when I was growing up, in the 70s, it was a pretty rough place.
Yeah.
And my, because I guess you had all the, Son of Sam and it was just rough. You look at a movie like The Warriors, and that's what you thought New York was like.
Yeah. And in some ways it was a rough and tumble place. It's certainly not that way anymore. So how often did you get into the city to actually see it for yourself?
Well, I really didn't start going into the city until I was in high school, and we would go in because you could get fireworks in Chinatown, and also there was these the town I grew up in. For some odd reason, we were all really into a lot of like the Grateful Dead and things like that, and there were a lot of bootleg shops. There was Bleecker Bob's record store. I used to go in there, and that was like a destination. Let's go to Bleecker Bob's, and we go and buy records. So that for me was like my earliest experiences with New York. I mean, when I was a kid, I would go to Yankee games,
which is a different experience altogether than going to
you're with your parents, right? But I remember going to see. I went when Reggie Jackson was playing.
Yeah, sure.
And Ron Guidry was pitching, and all those guys. And I remember the crowd was rough.
Yeah,
I remember seeing a lot of fights out in the stands, and I used to just think, Jesus, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But and then I continued to go to games and things as I got older.
But it's mellowed out. It's big
Yeah.
time mellowed out, and I think a lot of it is the tickets got to be so expensive that people who otherwise would just come there from wherever they were, and you pay a small amount of money to get in, and then you'd go and fight somebody who you didn't like. Nowadays, nobody wants to waste that kind of money.
No.
Yeah. And
no. Yeah. They jacked it up, and it's.
For me, going to Shea Stadium, the same thing where you would.
You're a Mets fan?
Yeah. I grew up a Met fan. Well, still am a Met fan, and I would. Is
that a Long Island thing? Are the Mets? Was that always like the team for the Long Island guys?
Well, it changed a lot because the Yankees went through their winning streak, and it used to seem like it was a pro Mets town for a long time, especially during the 80s. And then when the Yankees started to get good again, the pendulum shifted, and you definitely had a lot more people coming out as Yankee fans. But I think growing up for me, the biggest influence was the fact that the train line that I lived on went direct to Shea Stadium. It was the only one that went direct.
Oh,
so it was so easy for us to get there. And the proximity was really good. So I think that's what a lot of people found appealing about becoming Met fans. And we were always a National League town, so the Mets were easier for people to digest, even though the Yankees had their followers.
Sure, yeah.
But, the rough and tumble aspects of New York City were definitely different back in the 70s than they are now. And when's the last time you've been back?
Oh, God. I came back, let's see, I think it was about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I remember it just being so incredibly different.
Yeah.
I went down to the Village and, visited some friends and it was just a strange experience. I didn't recognize a lot of it because I lived in New York for 10 years before I moved out to LA.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived all over. I lived up on the Upper East Side. I lived down, I spent some time with my girlfriend down in Alphabet City.
Mm-hmm.
And then I finally, the last place I lived in New York was in Astoria. But I just remember the Village especially was just completely different. I mean, CBGB's was gone.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big thing. That's a probably as big a sign as anybody who's a music fan who left New York City and came back and said, "Whoa, CBGB's is not here. Things are way different."
And Times Square was like there were tables and chairs out all over the place, and and then what's the thing with it's like a park on an old train station, elevated train. What is that?
The High Line.
The High Line,
which apparently was there and unused for a long time. Somebody finally decided to put a park there. And it's very, very popular. But it's definitely not what New York City used to be. You say you have like tables and chairs in Times Square instead of how it used to be when you just had beds. And there was a little bit different vibe back in the 70s, the dirty city. So it is a culture shock for a lot of people, especially. And I haven't left long enough to come back and see the difference. But even living through it myself, I know how different it is now than it ever was. For you growing up, let's bring it back to your past. Growing up in New Jersey, what was Chatham like growing up?
Chatham was the only way to really describe it. It's a little bit of a bubble. Nothing comes in or out. It's the kind of town where you could leave your bike in the front yard.
Okay. Yeah.
And you had neighborhood kids to play with, and it was a lot of it was pretty well-to-do town. The school was really, really good. A lot of executives lived there. So I guess you could say there was a lot of money there.
Yeah.
My family, I'm not really quite sure what my family was doing there. My mom and dad, really wanted us to grow up in a safe place and have great education, and Chatham was perfect for that. But, I don't think we ever really fit in with what was going on there. My family is mostly from Philadelphia, that area.
Okay.
And, I'm Irish from Philly. And, so, it was great. It was an awesome experience. I loved, growing up there. I had some amazing times and, amazing friends, and it gave me a safe environment to kind of figure out who I was. And I started figuring out that I wanted to be an artist of some kind pretty early on.
How early would you say?
Well, I started mostly with drawing when I was probably, like 7 or 8.
Okay.
And then I as I started getting more and more into my teens, it became more about music, and I started. I'm a bass guitar player, and I was in a band very early on, like when I was 15, and playing in a garage and like doing old Kink covers and it was cool. It was very rock and roll, and I was able to express myself, and I just really fell in love with being a musician in a band. And then I ended up, when I was in high school, I ended up in a band called Sunsplash, and we were a Grateful Dead cover band. And, we would play in clubs in New York and all around New Jersey. And it was pretty cool when you're 16 years old and you've got, like 300 people showing up at your gig in New York. It was pretty cool.
That's nice. Wow.
Yeah.
That is pretty impressive.
Yeah. And so that gave me a real love for performing and being on stage. And I started dabbling a little bit in acting when I was in high school. But I didn't really get serious about it until I went to college.
Where did you end up going to school?
I went to a small liberal arts school in North Carolina called High Point University.
I have heard of that. What made you choose it?
It's the only school I got into.
Okay, sure. And, your Grateful Dead cover band credits didn't transfer very well. Otherwise,
you can imagine. I mean, being in a Grateful Dead cover band, I probably wasn't the best student in the world. But I mean, it didn't mean I wasn't smart. I just didn't.
You didn't apply yourself. Yeah.
Well, nothing I was learning in school was interesting to me.
I understand that.
And I think I had a real problem with how I was being taught. I wasn't being communicated to in a way that I understood. And I was always kind of a sensitive guy. So it was hard. School was hard for me. But I ended up getting into High Point. kind of on a probation kind of status because my grades were so terrible. My SAT scores were horrible.
Wow.
And they took me on for probation for a semester. They said, if you can make above a 2.0 your first semester, you can stay.
Wow.
So I, applied myself, and I planned on what I did was when I got there, I wanted to study communications, and because I thought I might, try being an engineer, a music engineer, and they had a small little, department there at the time, but by the time I had gotten down there to study, they had shut down that department. And so, I had a bunch of my music gear with me, and I remember for some reason on my transcripts it said that I was a theater major, which was false. Was completely false. And the head of I guess he was my counselor. I can't quite remember how it went down, but my counselor was the head of the theater department. His name was Ron Law. And he called me into his office and said, I got you down here as being a theater major, but why aren't you taking any of my classes?
Huh.
And I looked at him. I was like, I didn't know that was the case. I didn't know I was a theater major. I know nothing about that. He said, well, what do you want to do? And I told him that, I was interested in communications. And he said, well, do you know anything about sound? And I was like, yeah, I know a little bit about it, from what I did in my bands. And he said, well, why don't you come down and help run sound for the shows? And I was like, cool. How much does that pay? He's like, well, I can't pay you, but I'll give you theater credit. I'll give you credits, class
that's a pretty
credits.
good deal.
And I was like, all right, cool. And I remember I ran audio for the play Bus Stop. And and it was in a little black box theater. And it was really, really good. It was a really good show. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is really cool. This is something that, maybe I can get into. And it kind of snowballed from there. Plus, all the good looking girls were in the theater department. So.
It's funny how that works, isn't it? I did a lot of theater in high school, and it sounds like you and I had a very similar upbringing in terms of the town we came from. I came from a wealthy town on Long Island, although we were sort of from the other side of the tracks, and I had that sort of alienated feeling for various reasons, similar to what you said. You sounded like you had. And, one of the ways that people really socialize and how you got to connect with people is by doing sports. But I always thought, I could play football and be in a locker room surrounded by other dudes, or I can do theater and be surrounded by a lot of girls. And it just made more sense to do theater to me, because that was about as close as I was going to get anyway. So, it maximized my possibilities for what it was worth. And it sounds like you figured that out just a little bit after I did in college. So what was the process of getting from behind the audio board to actually starting to get up on stage? I mean, you had experience obviously being on a stage, but learning acting is a different deal.
Yeah. I did one play in high school. And I remember it was a lot of fun, but I remember like, Jesus, this is not easy.
No.
And, it was kind of terrifying. And, so what I did was I told him, I told Ron, the head of the theater department there, I told him that, I'll give this a try. Let's try this theater thing and let's see where I fit in. And so you kind of had to do a bunch of classes. You had to take, like theater history classes, and you had to take, everybody had to do something, like either some kind of like stagecraft, theater history, scene study classes. You had to take all those classes. And so I took a scene study class, and I think we started working on, I think it was Brighton Beach Memoirs was the first scene I ever did. But Ron was a big method guy. And it was funny because being at a small school in North Carolina, you wouldn't think that they would go anywhere near the method or know what it was, but he was heavily involved in it.
Interesting. Yeah. Because it's definitely so much more of a universal thing. But, you figure back when you were going to school that there wasn't as widespread.
Right. This is like around 88, 89.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I thought it was like, oh, wow, there's like a science to this stuff. It's really intense. And I just got into it and I fell in love with it. I kind of had a natural kind of ability with it, I guess, that came easier to me than music did because, music is, you got to practice music all the time in order to stay sharp. And acting is just really about it, was a lot of instinct for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of kicked in and I like the intensity of it. And I think I just fell in love with it from there and just dove deeper and deeper into it. And then the first play I ever did in college was Arthur Miller's The Crucible.
That's a pretty big leap.
Well, it was. I didn't have the lead role, but I had a nice little part.
Yeah, but that's challenging stuff. That's
and everybody was hardcore, dead serious about it. And right from the get go, you had to kind of really step up and jump in. And yeah, I mean, Arthur Miller is that's hard material.
Yeah.
And you have to, and it has to be respected too.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're doing just some community theater version of it, it's still, with that name attached to it, there's weight to it. You have to really respect it.
Yeah, you don't really riff on Arthur Miller all that much.
No, you can't because it doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work.
What's interesting to me is that you said that you kind of had just an instinctive ability with it, and a lot of people do have that when you get into it. But also, you felt comfortable working with the method. What aspects of the method worked well with your instinctive stuff, and how did that all merge together?
Well, I mean, I was very raw at the beginning. And I think that the thing that I really liked about the method was the immersion into it, like delving into characters' backgrounds and creating a life for them, or whatever the character was, creating a life through your imagination and also through like historical information. That to me was really interesting and really a lot of fun. And it was the first time ever I was being taught something where I was like really just absolutely fascinated by and I could understand it in a way that I wasn't able to understand anything else, math, science, none of that. This was something because I think it was, and it was also a way that I could communicate, which I felt was being really stifled before. I was able to find a new way for myself to communicate, and that made a huge difference in my life, really.
So you went 4-year program?
Yeah, it was a 4-year program. I think I was there for 4.5 because I skipped a gym credit. I had to stay. I had to stay for a summer and play volleyball during the summer in order to finish up and.
Volleyball summers in North Carolina is not a bad way to finish up a degree.
It was all right.
Yeah.
But I mean, I felt like an idiot because I wanted to get out and I wanted to get to work.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we had done a lot of really great things and I got to give that credit all to Ron Law. He's a great teacher. He's a really great, amazing teacher, and he instilled a work ethic in me that was really great and hardcore right off the get-go.
Very cool.
Yeah, so with him, it was really great training to begin with. And then when I graduated from High Point, I got my first pro gig. I did summer stock theater down in North Carolina at a place called The Sword of Peace, which was an outdoor drama, Revolutionary War outdoor drama, running around with guns and cannons going off and live animals. And
wow.
Yeah, it was pretty
cool. That's pretty cool. Now, the transition for a lot of people coming out of college into some sort of professional acting situation is one of the biggest challenges, and it's kind of like a recurring theme of people who I have on the show.
Yeah. Well,
what did you know about... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I think I know where you're going. The thing about like training in college, you're learning the craft, but you're not learning the business at all.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask. Is what did you know about the business at that point?
I knew nothing. I didn't know what a breakdown was. I didn't know. I had no business connections at all. I didn't even know where to start. I figured that, okay, well, I'll do this summer stock thing for the summer, and then I'll move to New York. And
right.
I was just going to kind of wing it and see where it went from there.
And is that what you ended up doing?
Yeah. I ended up moving to New York with one of my college roommates, and I think he was there before me, and I moved in with him. And he had started studying with Terry Schreiber at the T. Schreiber studio, or he was with Gloria Maddox first at the T. Schreiber studio. And I thought, well, all right, well, I'll go down and check that out. And that place was like heaven for me. I fell in love with that studio, right away. And I was very fortunate that I got to study first with Gloria Maddox, who's no longer with us anymore, but she was the one. She was an amazing coach and an amazing person, and really knew how to develop young talent.
So, what was your experience like working with Terry? Well,
Terry's a master. It's the only real word I can use to describe the guy. He was a big. He was a big proponent of using, whatever works. And he used a lot of different aspects of the method. And, he was big into, emotional recall work and a lot of the basic tenets of the method, but also, whatever worked for you is basically what he would pull out.
Yeah.
And, he was just such a brilliant director. That was the thing. He's an acting coach, but he's got a director's mind, and he was able to really mold and help push people into areas that they weren't really used to going into. And a lot of comfort zones were definitely destroyed. There, but it was all good, and everything was all there was no funny business. He was the real thing, and he's old school, and he's one of the kindest people you'll ever meet as well.
Yeah, I've only met him a couple of times, but he's a super nice guy, and the reputation of that place is great. I mean, they've worked with a lot of people who have gone on to a lot of great stuff. So.
Well, when I was there, Ed Norton was there, and Peter Sarsgaard, and a lot of other. There's been a lot of people that have come through there.
Right.
So it was a great school.
Yeah. How long were you in that program?
I was there for about 8 years.
8 years.
With him.
Most of the time you were in New York City.
Yeah. And I honestly, it was the best thing I could have done. He prepared me very, very well for the real world, and again, I was lucky. I had my coach in college, and I segued into studying with Terry, so it was kind of a seamless integration.
That's great. Now, how did you parlay all that into finally just having professional opportunities? What was that process like? How did you manage all that stuff?
Well, getting the work back then was hard. I could not get an agent. I had a manager for a little while, and that didn't ever really work out. But getting an agent in New York was very difficult. So you had to get a lot of your own work, and that was through you have to wait for backstage to hit the newsstands, and then you'd run down. Remember that? You'd run down.
It was it's so funny. Nowadays it's like I run to my computer 4 feet from my bed and I see what's there. Yeah.
It was real work. You had to wake up, you had to go down, you had to get backstage, you had to rifle through it, then you'd put together your headshots and resumes and mail them out.
Yeah. And wait.
Whoever was casting. I ended up getting a commercial agent, which was great. And I ended up, booking some commercials right out of the gate, which was awesome. But I guess the big job, and I did a bunch of NYU student films, and that was really valuable training also.
Sure. That stuff is amazing when you're starting out. Because you get reps and you understand what it's like being on a set with people who are really focused on the process of making film from a very fresh perspective. Plus, you can potentially make contacts that could stick with you for a long time. Right,
and same thing with doing extra work for big films too. That would roll in. I always got upgraded into like some kind of a featured extra. I got lucky that way. I was kind of a pain in the ass, I guess. But that was great training. I always stuck around. I always wanted to see what was going on and how things worked. So that really helped out.
Sure.
But I ended up booking the first really big job I ever got was I ended up booking a feature film called Living and Dining. And I had the lead role in that film. And it was a stroke of luck, that Maureen Stapleton was in this film also, and she's a legend.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it was more. She was getting up there in years, and she was kind of on the decline. But she was still very, very feisty, and we shot that up in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, and it was with Maureen Stapleton and Kathy Wallach, who is Eli Wallach's daughter and Kate Jackson's daughter, and I had a really great experience working up there with them, and Maureen was fantastic. Unfortunately, that film never saw the light of day. It went to one film festival, and then I guess the director just didn't have confidence in it and decided not to push it.
And back then there weren't quite as many festivals as you'll find today. So
no, exactly, yeah. And I think and at the time I think we shot that on HD, and I think it was one of the first HD cameras that came out.
Wow.
So I think and we shot it on HD. We were up there for like a month shooting.
Oh, wow.
And I had a nice bond with all the cast members and the crew. It was a magic experience doing that film. Being
it was your first feature, what do you think was the biggest thing that the first lead role in a feature? What was the biggest thing you learned from that?
I worked every day. And so I had to be prepared every single day. And I think that, that was like, okay, people are spending a lot of money on this. And, don't fuck it up. Is it okay to swear?
Go ahead. Sure.
I'm sorry.
No. Because I think that speaks to, the meaning of it. And I'm big on words. I'm big on words. So, when you put it in those terms, it's like, that's the deal. When you look around and you see that you are probably being paid a fair amount of the budget for this thing, and people are counting on you to do a good job, because if you don't, the whole thing falls apart.
Oh, yeah.
That identifies the pressure that's there when you do have a large, significant role in a production like that.
Right. And I learned right away that, being the lead in the film, you got to kind of be like the quarterback, where you've got to set the tone and the pace and the tempo. And, because if you don't, like you said, it falls apart, and everyone has to step up their game. And that was the first time I ever got put in that position where I had to be like, okay, I have to come out every day, and I've got to really kick this thing's ass. And I feel like, and it's a shame that the film never got seen, because it was Maureen Stapleton's last movie. And it's a good movie. It's a good independent film about a bunch of people living up in a tourist town, and they work in a restaurant, and the restaurant's closing, and they're all trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives. And it's a cool film. It's just a shame that nobody ever really got a chance to see it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's and not to diminish what you personally went through, but you can only imagine how many really interesting, good films are out there that never got to see the light of day because of something like a director not having confidence in his own work, or some other weird, quirky thing that stopped a potentially really good thing from getting out there.
Well, I think there wasn't a market for that kind of film at the time. It was all about action films or horror films, and so it just didn't really have there wasn't a niche for it.
Right. Yeah, there's so many more venues for niche stuff to get seen and even distributed. So a lot of it has to do with timing. Now, not long after you did that, I'm guessing, is when you decided to transition to L.A. What made that happen for you?
Well, right after I did Living and Dining, I got cast in a film called The Ticking Man, and and it was the lead role in that. And it was a thriller about a guy who had a bomb inside him. Kind of a lot like the film. Do you remember the film Phone Booth?
Yes.
Okay, we shot ours before Phone Booth, but it was very similar to that whole. It was very much in like the vein of like Speed and Run Lola Run.
Right,
like
ticking time bomb kind of film.
Right, yeah. So, and I did that film, and I felt like, you know what? And I was doing a lot of commercials and a lot of voiceover work, and I was making a living, and I was doing a lot of soap opera work on mostly on All My Children, and I thought, okay, at the time in New York, even though I was working a lot, there wasn't a whole lot of television, and there wasn't a whole lot of films being shot in New York.
Right.
I think you had I remember I did an episode of one of the Cosby, it was some Bill Cosby show. Mm-hmm. And that was about it, really, that was being shot out there. That and Law and Order, which is funny because I never did an episode of Law and Order. Everybody I know was on Law and Order.
I'm still waiting for my first one.
Are you?
Yeah, well, it's like I thought it came with the SAG card. You get your SAG card, and 3 weeks later they call you and they have you on Law and Order. But no, not yet.
Just be patient.
Yeah, I need to be more. I need to be more frail and victim-like. I think that's probably what it is. And I think in New York has transitioned a lot since then, also. But definitely there was that time, especially there was the strike, and then there was after 9/11, things changed dramatically.
Here's what happened. After I did The Ticking Man, I felt like I was really on a roll, and I looked at my girlfriend and I said, "Look, let's go now." I was I think I was 29, 28 or 29. Yep. I was like, "Let's go now," and I think now's the right time, and so we packed up and we moved out to L.A. and we didn't know anybody. We didn't know one person out here,
not even any other actors.
No one.
Wow,
really. And we moved out here, and we got settled into this little place in Hollywood. We were the only American speaking people in the building. Everybody else was Russian.
Oh, wow.
Which I thought was just mind blowing. I was like, really? This is really strange.
It goes definitely against stereotype for sure.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, this is crazy. And we kind of hit the ground running, and we got our little day jobs to kind of set us up, and then we started hammering away at trying to get representation out here.
And she was also an actor.
She was an actress. Yeah, her name's Claire Hartley. We ended up getting married.
You say that with blithely. She's my wife. Yeah, that is a side note. Yeah,
that comes further along down the story. But she's great. She was she doesn't act anymore, but she was very good. I met her at the Schreiber studio.
Okay,
so that's another reason why I love that place.
Of course, sure.
I met the love of my life there. So we hit the ground running out here. I got a job down at the Santa Monica airport.
Interesting.
in the noise abatement department. So I would talk to the pilots that were flying into the airport. I would have to tell them that they were too loud or too, they have to cut their engines. Tom Cruise would be flying in his whatever, Mitsubishi Zero or whatever he was flying, and I have to tell him, you got to cut your engines because you're gonna blow all the sensors. And so that was a crazy job.
Wow.
But while I was there and hustling, trying to find an agent, trying to find work, I don't know if 9/11 happened first or the writers and actors and directors strike happened.
Yeah, it was all around the same time. Yeah,
it was all around the same time. And when 9/11 happened, it was heartbreaking because I felt still very close and connected to New York.
Sure.
and then the writers and actors and directors all went on strike, and so there was nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
There was no work, and once it got kind of resolved, I booked a commercial, and then I did an episode of 24, and that kind of held me over for a little bit. But then I went through a dry spell. I booked a gig on Crossing Jordan.
And were you working on were these jobs? You said you were still looking for representation. Did you find representation, or were you able to get those?
I actually, as soon as all the strikes and all that, ended, I found representation really quick.
Interesting.
And it was funny because I was like, wow, that was kind of easy. Because in New York, it's next to at the time, it was next to impossible.
It's still hard. It's still probably as hard as it was back then. Only there's just so much. There's so much non-union work being done, and there's not as many opportunities, and the opportunities to get seen and for people to see you. There is definitely still lots of challenges, but out there you found it to be easier.
Yeah. No, I was able to slide into some agencies pretty quick, and I mean, granted, I've bounced around a lot over the years. I've bounced around a lot of agencies over the years. And then I kind of settled into a groove and got, little work here and there. But then I fell into that age category where I was too young to play a father or a business guy, and I was too old to play the college guy anymore.
Yeah.
And so I got stuck in that, and I decided, okay, maybe I should take a little time off and reassess what I'm doing, because I wasn't making any money doing it.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting to think about taking time off, because, we consider this like a 24/7 job. It's 365. Even when we're not working, we're still really kind of doing stuff.
Yeah.
So to cut it off is an interesting move. But as you said, you were reassessing. So what decisions ended up being made at that time?
Well, we decided to, finally get married, and got married, and then we had a little baby girl not long after that, and my wife she decided she didn't want to act anymore, and she's a yoga teacher, and she decided to open up a yoga studio in Sherman Oaks, and so opening up a new business was our focus then at that time. And so I helped out a lot at home with the newborn, and while she was out, hustling to get her business off the ground. So, I took about a good 5 years off from it.
Wow.
But what was funny, during that 5 years, I got back into music, and I started a band, and I made a little bit of a run with this band, but then that ended up falling apart. But once my daughter was old enough, I decided that, okay, I've got a couple of years behind me now. I've got some new life experience. Maybe I should jump back into acting again. Huh. And I found an acting school out here that I liked a lot, and I decided to enroll in it and, kind of start from scratch again, doing scene study. And so I started doing some scene study work. And from there, it all just started to kick off again. And while I was there, I came up with the idea to create a web series, because at the time, the footage that I had of myself for my reel was so old and unusable, and it was just so dated, and nobody cared about that. Even though 24 was still pretty fresh in everybody's mind, nobody really cared about that.
Right. It's hard to get people excited about you if you can't show them your recent work and something that's kind of hot right now. Yeah. Right.
So then I started doing because now it's like people are filming things all over the place. So I started doing a lot of short films again, a couple things here and there. And then I came up with this idea for a web series, and I decided to shoot a pilot using some of the actors that I knew from class and some other crew and camera people that I became friends with. I came up with the idea of The Rolling Soldier, which is the web series that I have out now.
Right. Now, for somebody who, I mean, and I looked at the pilot, it looks great. I mean, it's very intense. Unlike a lot of what goes on the web right now, it's definitely drama, which is fascinating.
I wanted to do, because I spent a lot of time like researching web series. I was looking at at a lot of what was out there, and what I was seeing was, and I'm not putting any of this down at all, but the trend was mostly 20-something comedies.
Yes.
And just crazy, super ultra violent action stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, well, I let's see if we can try something different. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to have I like the spy film genre, and I'm a big fan of like the 70s, a lot of the 70s spy films of the day, like Day of the Jackal and All the President's Men and things like that. I thought, it might be kind of cool because I felt like that's where my niche was. I feel like I'm that kind of an actor.
I think that seems right. Just I've seen a little bit of your work, and it fits you very well. Like the series you created fits you incredibly well. It doesn't feel like you created something that you always wanted to do just so you can have the experience of doing something. Like if you had created a wacky 20-something comedy, but you weren't quite right for it. No, this fits you very well. Now, what's the idea behind the Rolling Soldier story in terms of storyline?
Well, what's interesting is the initial idea was I wanted to tell a story about a guy who was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And I thought, that's kind of, and then I read an article, I think maybe it was Rolling Stone. I'm not sure where the article was, but I read somewhere that they were treating people with PTSD with psychedelic drugs, like ecstasy or small doses of LSD. And I thought, wow, that's really crazy. That's I never knew that. That sounds really interesting. So I thought that might be kind of fun to play with, as a story, to tell. And, I played around with a couple different drafts of the idea. And then I thought, this is going to be really hard showing somebody under the effect of some kind of drug. Maybe I should move into a different area. So then I thought more along kind of like, okay, why don't we make this kind of like a Sopranos type of story where there's a family involved and something's happened, and my character he gets injured and he goes into a coma, and he wakes up 10 years later and discovers that he's on the run. And that was pretty much the premise. So then I just kind of thought, all right, let's see if I can shoot this. And I got my people together, and everyone seemed really into it because I think a lot of them were in the same boat I was in, where they needed stuff. They needed some kind of footage, or they were just itching to work. You know?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of that going on right now.
Yeah, and I wanted to do something along the lines of like Homeland or Zero Dark 30, that kind of vibe. And I'm also a big fan of David Lynch, and I thought, well, it might be interesting to have some kind of trippy aspect to it, where it makes it gooses it a little bit more than just your typical whatever Mission Impossible story. I didn't want that. I wanted it more like a Sopranos type of story set in that military government environment.
And what I like about what I saw in the pilot is that you don't hit everybody over the head with everything. You do let things play out in a slower manner, and that lends itself very well to a serialized story. So I like that about it, and it was intriguing to watch. When you shot it, how did you fund it? How did you make it happen? How did you work it out that way?
Well, I was lucky. One of the kids in the show is to make a couple extra bucks on the side. I've taught martial arts for a long time, and one of the kids in the show, the boy Max, his name is Max Tadman in real life. He was one of my karate students, and his dad is a good friend, and his dad likes to dabble in producing, and so he put up the money for the pilot. The pilot cost about think it was somewhere around $5,000 to shoot,
which is not a lot. So if you're able to budget a shoot like that, yeah,
right, which isn't a lot. But I was lucky. The DP on the pilot is also a good friend of mine, and she had her own gear. But we ended up using a guy with a grip truck also that we probably really didn't need, but it was good to have it.
Sure,
it was expensive.
Yeah.
But my friend the DP, her name is Joya Speciale, and she's a New Yorker, but she's out here now, and she was nominated for an Emmy for the TV show Intervention.
Wow,
which is, I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, but
that's a reality show, right?
It's a reality show, but it's hardcore. I mean, she's around hardcore drug addicts, and she also has a really, really impressive background shooting independent films. Also, she's worked on a lot of really great independent films. Like I think Maria State of Grace. Or Maria Full of Grace, and I think The Believer, are some of the films that she's worked on. So
you managed to get a good pedigree behind your project, which is great.
And it was nice, and she's kind of like family, so it was nice to have another really close person involved.
Yeah, so you were able to you were pulled from different aspects of your life. The amazing. And I said it's not a lot of money, but for somebody to invest that in your project, that is amazing. I mean, that is a lot.
Oh, yeah.
$10 is a lot of money for somebody to donate to your project, but somebody's coming up with $5,000. That's great. But in terms of production, that's a small budget, and you were able to make something really great out of that. By being creative and tapping into your resources. And that's what you have to do. How did the experience of helping your wife start her business help or affect what you did to start producing your own work?
Basically, once her business was up and running, it provided a lot of buffer and leeway for me to be able to do this kind of thing. We also, because the yoga community is so big out in LA, there's such a vast array of people that do yoga, especially in the production world. I was able to pull a lot of favors from students of hers.
Interesting.
Throughout the series, I was able to pull locations and props and all kinds of great contacts just through the yoga studio that normally I wouldn't have. So in a lot of ways, that was an absolute blessing. It really helped a lot. And it was a nice community to be able to fall back on, when I needed help with things. Yeah.
And it's great when it all ties together, when you can access all parts of your life for the thing you're working on there. What's next for the series?
Well, it's all up on YouTube right now. Mm-hmm. There's 7 episodes altogether. They're all about 10 minutes long. What's next is, basically what I'm trying to do is get as many viewers and as many eyeballs on it as I can. Mm-hmm. And that's a slow process. Doing things like, this podcast is a great vehicle for it.
Sure.
By the way, it's called The Rolling Soldier. I don't know if we've even...
We did, yeah. And I'm sure I have taken care of that in the intro
okay, cool.
to the interview. So yeah, The Rolling Soldier on YouTube is definitely what you want people to look for.
And it's also on Facebook. And what's interesting, Facebook is now kind of a player now in the video, with streaming video and stuff. So you can watch it on Facebook as well. Just type in The Rolling Soldier in your Facebook browser and it'll come up.
Very cool.
I guess the main idea now is get eyes on it. I'm trying to contact as many people as I can about distribution for it. I'm open to talking to people about using the show maybe for as a proof of concept for like maybe a network type of show.
Sure.
But if there's a lot of demand for it, if people really get into it and seem like they want more, I would love to do a second season of it. But that's a whole other.
That's for fates to decide, I guess.
Can of worms, yeah. Right? Because with the first season, I had to do an Indiegogo campaign to fund it, And, what I wanted to do is I think my budget that I wanted was 30 grand, and I was only able to get 7 grand.
Wow.
And I had to make that, I had to stretch that out. And I wasn't able to use the DP from the first pilot. So I had to kind of hunt around for somebody else. And I found this great guy named Sergio Crego, who's a DP and a grip, and he's kind of a jack of all trades. And he really liked the story. And he said to me, he's like, look, we'll shoot this, put me on as a producer, and we'll get it done. And so with his help, I was able to shoot, 6 more episodes.
That's fantastic.
With only 7 grand, but don't tell anybody that it was 7 grand. And we made that go a long way. And if you watch the other episodes, you'll see the production value in the other episodes is way, way higher than the pilot.
See, to me, and this may not be everybody, but to me, to hear that you were able to be creative and you were able to maximize $7,000 to make a really good series, to me, that's perhaps more impressive than the ability to raise $30,000 and then come up with something mediocre. Well, it's definitely more impressive than if you were to take $30,000 and then just turn out something that's kind of eh. I'm much more impressed when somebody is creative and can maximize that way. And I think that will serve you better moving forward. Yeah,
it was definitely a really, a real kind of punk rock approach to it. I had to, because we didn't raise the money we wanted to raise, I had to make a really hard decision about what I was going to do with post-production. And it came down to, well, I'm going to have to do it.
Wow.
So not only did I, act in the series and direct it and write it and produce it, then I had to go in and I had to do all aspects of post-production.
Wow.
So I had to learn how to edit. I had to learn how to do sound design. I had to learn how to do color correction, sound editing, and then figure out what codecs to mix it down to. I mean, so many things that I had no experience with. And I spent basically a year editing and learning on the way. So that's where the 7 grand basically covered the costs of the shoot. But everything else was me locked up in a garage, with no air conditioning in Southern California,
man,
trying to piece this thing together. And so it was brutal.
That definitely sounds like a labor of love.
Yeah. And, there was a lot of drama attached to all that, just the post-production work too, because there's some things that were happening personally, in my life, and also things that are happening personally to some of the cast members as well, and other people involved in the production. So it was a whole, it's kind of like the Apocalypse Now documentary, Hearts of Darkness. There was some serious drama.
Well, someday you'll tell that story, and it'll be a nice addendum to the series.
That's its own story.
So how do people keep in touch with you online? Where do they find you on the web?
Well, they can go to YouTube and just type in The Rolling Soldier in the search bar, and all the episodes will come up. Like I said, there's 7 episodes, and they're all action packed, and they're really fun to watch. And it's not like I don't think it's like any other web series that's out there right now. And also, you can find us on Facebook, The Rolling Soldier. You can find me on Facebook. It's just John Tague. John Tague. On Twitter, I'm at John J. Tague. The Rolling Soldier Twitter handle is at the Rolling Soldi, SOLDI, because I couldn't get the ER. so that's the Twitter handle. Where else can you find us?
Well, that's a lot of places.
Google. You can find us on Google Plus. Does anybody use that?
It's you.
I'm on there.
It's the Rolling Soldier and Tumbleweeds these days. I think that's pretty much what's left.
Yeah, we're killing it on Google Plus right now.
Your Friendster page is one of my favorites. And,
our MySpace page is killing it also.
Yeah, you guys got all the traffic that those sites get anymore. So good for you. You've cornered the market on MySpace traffic.
I'm good. I'm good that way.
Hey, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Man, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's such a nice opportunity to get to talk about the show and talk a little bit about who I am and what the process was. And I really appreciate you taking the time and thank you for helping spread the word.
John Tague, good guy. Glad I had a chance to get to know him and see what he's up to and where his career is going. And I'm always so impressed and glad for people who create their own work and produce it and put it out there for the world to see. And when you're not doing anything and you find yourself at a standstill, invest in yourself. Take the time, create something for yourself and put it out there. Nothing may come of it, but I guarantee you have an exponentially greater chance for something to happen if you put yourself out there. So take John's example, or Tia's example, as I mentioned earlier in the show. Put it out there. Do your stuff, put it out there, and good things can happen. And more often than not, something good comes out of it. So if you want to follow John's story and keep in touch with him, you can follow him on Twitter at John J. Tague. I'll have the direct link to that in the show notes for this episode at bringyourownlunch.com. And if you want to see his work, you can look up The Rolling Soldier on YouTube, Facebook, and Vimeo. I'll have some links for you on the website as well. Thanks, John, for sitting with me across an entire continent. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to doing that again. By the way, if you have any comments about the quality of the audio for this one, I definitely can use some feedback. Send an email to dave@bringyourownlunch.com and just let me know what you thought. I prefer always sitting with somebody in person to have the conversation, but obviously there's a whole country that I would need to traverse in order to do person-to-person interviews with some people in this business. So if you happen to have a comment about the audio, pro, con, or otherwise, just send me an email, dave@bringyourownlunch.com. All right, that about does it for this edition of Bring Your Own Lunch. Glad you can join us. Thank you. Also, thank you to Banuba. That's the band you're listening to right now. Go to their website, download their music, buy their music, go see them live. They're awesome. Support them the way they support us. And don't forget to go to our website, bringyourownlunch.com. You can find out all the information about John and past guests, present guests, future guests. You can find out everything. Specific information, exclusive stuff. You can just go there and see it all. So go to bringyourownlunch.com. You can also like us on facebook.com/bringyourownlunch. You can follow us on Twitter at BYOL Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at bringyourownlunch. And if you have a moment you want to support us, please go to iTunes or Stitcher, rate, review, subscribe to the show, and tell all the friends you've ever had, even your enemies or strangers. Just go tell them to listen to Bring Your Own Lunch and a hashtag BYOL because that's what the kids do, and they tell me that's cool. Stay tuned for Jimmy Jack's Cowpunch Hour, followed by Mansoor and the Fish, and until next week, when I have another great guest lined up, this is Dave. I'll see you next week. When they think they have the answers, I change the questions.